Dan Harris is a US political commentator. He's a friend of this programme and host of the podcast Over Here, Over There. Morning to you, Dan. It's a mess, isn't it?
It is. It is very involved, very complicated situation there. I do admire President Biden to, making this trip like he did similarly when he went to the Ukraine and that clandestine trip, that night train that he went to see Zelensky. And now this was obviously unannounced, and he went there wasn't exactly sure what he was trying to accomplish besides, I think the basic thing was just tamping down tensions, really. But as a peacemaker, I think this situation is so volatile at the moment. It's hard to see that being relatively successful at the moment.
Is President Biden's presence, and indeed our own Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's presence there today, is that helpful to the situation, or is it a distraction?
I think it is helpful. I mean, it's certainly risky on all those leaders' parts because you have Rishi Sunak today, and I think Chancellor Scholz coming very soon, and in a couple of days, as well as Emmanuel Macron later. So there's a bit of a stream of leaders going to Israel to show their support, but also to have a word with the president, Netanyahu, and the Israeli government as far as their expectations go. So there's a lot more that you can do face to face, and it's more meaningful. It's more symbolic. You can really get your message across rather than going through channels. So it is helpful. But can you imagine how difficult it is during this time, especially going to such a sense powder keg like the Middle East to take these trips?
Absolutely.
But certainly worth the effort.
And this is it's a conflict that perhaps not so much like the war in Ukraine at the moment, but this is a conflict that could widen and have huge ramifications, and perhaps no less more serious ramifications if other countries get involved.
Yes, I mean, the Middle East has had power brokers galore, over the last 30, 40, 50 years, ever since the formation of Israel, there's been blocks of interest on both sides. So, with the various conflicts that have happened in 48 and then 73, and now with this, you could see them starting to line up, even having two large battleship carrier groups coming to the area, to the region from the U.S., just to ward off any further involvement by Iran or Hezbollah, just to shows you how significant, and the tensions are as far as trying not to spread it beyond what's already been happening. So the tensions are very high. Unfortunately, after President Biden left, I don't think those tensions really were dampened down that much. But was his support for Israel and trying to be at least an attempt to be a peacemaker, was it worthwhile? Yes, I think it was worthwhile. Unfortunately, that meeting with the leaders of Egypt, the Palestinian Authority, and Jordan didn't happen because of the hospital bombing that happened. They canceled the meeting after that, which was you have to say it was a bit of a snub to President Biden, but and shows the lack of leverage currently in the immediate time that the U.S. has on the situation. So a bit worrying when that happens because, it's not very often when you cancel a meeting with the U.S. president.
No, absolutely not. And I thought was quite telling as well that he was urging, according to the papers today anyway, that he's urging them not to make the same mistakes that the United States did after 9/11. What actually does he mean by that? Because that's quite a break with American foreign policy going back, I suppose, isn't it?
Well, I think we have to transport ourselves back to that time in the U.S. and how people felt. And they were, basically, I think the U.S. was in shock for months and months after that. And I'm sure the Israelis are in shock for what's happening here. It was a total surprise. And, of course, we can go on as far as, was it an intelligence failure, of course. But, it's that counsel from President Biden to them, just trying to relate, on a personal note, just trying to his effort just to tamping down tensions a bit before obviously this planned invasion into Gaza takes place, and to warn or at least to advise or show some insight into the situation given our past experience with 9/11. I know there's a lot of been parallels drawn with that, but it's counsel that really is useful and heartfelt.
Okay, let's talk about President Biden at home in the States at the moment. So, and this ongoing dispute about the role of speaker there, a pivotal role, particularly, I suppose, if Biden wants to raise money for Israel and for Ukraine.
That's right. It's not unrelated to what's happening in the Middle East. I mean, without the House side of Congress, there's the House and the Senate. And the House really is the funding part. It's the appropriations. It really approves the money for the within the budget, and then the Senate. Then they negotiate with the Senate, and then it gets passed with a joint bill. But it really originates on the House side, so the power's on the House. So in the House. And at the moment, as maybe your listeners have seen, that there's no leader, there's no House Speaker, and there has been a House Speaker since McCarthy, Kevin McCarthy was ousted about a little over 2 weeks ago. So it's a bit rudderless. And so no meetings, no committee meetings, nothing is happening. So no funds can be approved for either Israel or the Ukraine or Taiwan or anything else. And so it's like you said, I think you said, or someone else said, it's a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
And so that has to be rectified as soon as possible for a number of reasons, but certainly for what's happening in the Middle East.
Finally, Dan, I'm going to throw you a curveball here just before you go, and we're going to be talking about the speech that the King made last night, a kind of almost a State of the Nation address at Mansion House, and we're going to be talking about the best speeches that people have ever heard, and Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" has already been nominated, and I was talking about I think for me one of them is JFK at the University of America. We all breathe the same air. We are all mortal. That speech as well. I was just wondering if there was any speeches that kind of stick in your mind as well as great examples of oratory.
Well, I have both of those on my iPhone, to be honest, and so I do listen to them from time to time for inspiration.
Yeah.
The other one I would add to that, and again, it's JFK, is his speech at Rice University about going to the moon. Oh, yeah. It's very inspirational and shows the extent of man's aspirations, both here on Earth and in space. And I just think that's it gives me goosebumps. But certainly those three are from the '60s are just pivotal in my mind as far as what speech making can do and how it can move a population.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think we share the same iPhone. Dan, always good to talk to you. All the best to you. US political commentator Dan Harris there, and host of the podcast Over Here, Over There.